This is CBSSports.com's College Football 360. We come your way each and every day, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Kevin Cork. We have a huge week in the SEC coming your way this weekend. We like to call it Prove It Week around here. LSU taking on Florida. You have Georgia battling South Carolina. And speaking of the Gamecocks and the Bulldogs, we, of course, had a chance to bring you the Georgia game this past weekend. And afterwards, I had a chance to ask Gary Danielson of CBS Sports what he thought about the Bulldogs' chances of being serious contenders to win the SEC East.
They have enough weapons on offense, enough parts on defense. You're going to catch hot quarterbacks. You're going to have those games that kind of get out of hand when, people are making those back shoulder throws and making plays. I don't think this is anything to be embarrassed about. I think Mark Richt was extremely correct when he was talking to Tracy. Hey, a win's a win in this league. Let's move on to the next one.
A win is a win, even a hard-fought victory. And with more on that, we welcome once again Dennis Stott to the program. Dennis, I want to ask you about what Gary had to say about those Bulldogs. Listen, anytime you serve up 30 points in a first half, you have to wonder, well, just how good can this team be if you're giving up 27 or 30 points in a half? And yet, as you pointed out, listen, at this stage of the game, when you're talking about so many great offenses, maybe it's not an indictment of the Georgia defense, or maybe it's just sort of a nod to the offense that they were facing. Your thoughts?
Well, and don't forget, Georgia turned it over a lot and set up Tennessee with some short fields to get those 44. But that being said, Kevin, I'll go you one better. I think Georgia's a national championship. First an SEC contender and maybe a national championship contender, because I do think they have all the parts, and I do think they're going to get better. Remember, they're just getting players back from those suspensions. Bakari Rambo and Alec Ogletree played on Saturday. The defense hasn't really played together all season. It's going to get better. I think for the first time in 4 years, that winner of the East is going to give the West a game in Atlanta. The last 3 games have been decided by an average of 30 points, and I think Georgia is going to be that team. It really comes down to what it looked like in the middle of summer. This week's game against Georgia and South Carolina in that division. The loser is essentially out of it because you're asking the winner of that game to lose twice in the division. I don't think that's going to happen, and even if they did, they still might have the head-to-head over the team they're tied with. So it's a huge result. South Carolina's at home. I expect Georgia to win, but don't hold me to that.
Well, I agree with you only because, and having watched the two teams, I just think Georgia is more physical. They appear more physical, especially along the lines of defense is stout when they do play well. It's going to be tight, but I think the Dogs may be just a hair better. But, of course, we'll all find out this weekend. Speaking of better, the LSU Bayou Bengals are certainly better than most. They go on the road. They demolish teams all the time. They come back, but they have an interesting contest, Dennis, with the Florida Gators, a team that I think I sort of underestimated. Here they are undefeated. How do you see this one working out?
This game probably comes along at a really bad time for LSU. They still haven't figured out who they are. We all expected them to be hungry, to come back and try to get that national championship that slipped out of their fingers last year. They haven't played like it. They were sluggish against Towson. They were sluggish early on against Idaho before blowing them out. They look flawed, and I don't know what it is. The running game that should be the best in the country, at least the deepest, maybe not the best, but the deepest, just hasn't been there. And the defense has been, I guess, just inattentive, I guess is the best thing to say at times. And now they go into the belly of the beast to Florida, which thinks it has, it's the new contender in the East and in the SEC. And I think it's huge for LSU to play well. Any kind of win they can sneak out of there, they should be fortunate with. And don't be surprised if Florida wins this, because I don't think LSU can just turn on the ignition this week. Florida's a much better team than they were last year.
They are a much better squad. I agree with you. And LSU tends to play better when they are emotional. Maybe if they're emotional this weekend, I expect LSU to win. But you're right. If they can't quite hone in on what they are and who they are, you're right. They'll leave Gainesville with a loss. Dennis Dodd joining us here on College Football 360 as we look ahead to some interesting matchups this week in the college landscape. And let's talk about that Notre Dame-Miami game. Relevance, finally. I'm so excited. I can't stand it.
Yeah, finally. This 2 years ago when this was announced, it was like a curiosity. Oh, that's nice. They're renewing the rivalry. Neither team was really doing that well. Now it's got huge implications. Miami's 4-1 and 3-0 in the ACC. It looks like they've got a chance to maybe win that league and maybe play FSU for the title, which would be great. Notre Dame we know about. They've built it to this point on defense. It's Brian Kelly wasn't wasn't hired necessarily to have a team that runs the ball and plays defense. But look, Notre Dame will take it any way they can. And I suspect there'll be, what I want to see is just a little bit of woofing. Bring me back to 1988. There's got to be a tunnel somewhere where they come out together and they're in Soldier Field. I don't know the logistics, but I'm just hoping. And we just get a little bit of a throwback. It's going to be a tremendous game.
Can a brother get some fatigues in here? The old Catholics versus convicts back in the day. If you're too young to remember that, Google it. You'll love the stuff. Hey, Dennis, let me ask you about a big matchup coming up in the Big Ten. The Nebraska Cornhuskers really fell behind. I thought they were going to blow that game against Wisconsin. They hang on. Now they have a very big date with Ohio State. Yeah,
Nebraska's a weird team. No one talked about them at all, really, before the season about winning the Big Ten. They went 9-4 last year. There were whispers about Bo Pelini's job security. A couple of weeks ago, Bo Pelini goes to the hospital with whatever it was, the flu, and they have this great comeback against Wisconsin, similar one they had, last year, not against Wisconsin, but they are kind of a comeback team. I don't know what to make of Nebraska. They look like a poor man's West Virginia. They almost have to outscore teams. The defense hasn't been great. They're part of this Big Ten malaise, of mediocrity, but they just keep winning. And I got on the stump last week and said, why not Nebraska? With two of those teams ineligible for bowls, one of them being Ohio State. It basically, if you think about it, doesn't count in the standings because Nebraska can afford to lose this game and still win that division, the Legends division. Ohio State isn't eligible for the Leaders division, so they can't rematch. Obviously, it hurts their record. But I think Nebraska goes in there with nothing to lose. Ohio State's still trying to figure itself out. They're a big, bruising, pounding team. I'm waiting for the moment when Braxton Miller's head separates from his body because he just can't keep running the ball like he does. He's a magnificent player, but they've got to find somebody else, Carlos Hyde or Jordan Hall or somebody, to run the ball besides him. He's no Tim Tebow physically. He can't last.
I agree completely on that. I mean, he runs the ball all over the yard, and I think they'll probably win the contest, although you do take your life into your hands when you're facing the black shirts. Although I think what bothers me most about Nebraska is they're not the Nebraska I'm used to. I'm used to seeing them run the football, 300 yards, guaranteed a game, great defense, and then they sort of squeeze the life out of an opponent. That doesn't seem to be the Nebraska team we're watching right now, Dennis.
No, and it hasn't been that way for a while, frankly. They haven't won a conference title since '99. They won that fluke, or they got to the fluke BCS game in 2001 against Miami and got blown out. But that identity is not there. And I think at Nebraska, they're just willing to take anything to win right now. It's Rex Burkhead is a fine, tough runner. Taylor Martinez has bounced back after a couple of down years. And has gotten back to the point where he might be one of the best quarterbacks, at least in the Big Ten. His numbers are up there. Mm-hmm. And they're going to need it. You wouldn't expect them to win at Ohio State, but as I just said, Ohio State just keeps winning these close games, and they let Cal lets them off the hook, and UAB plays them close, and they win a 1-point game at Michigan State. Why not Nebraska this week?
Boy, you know what? Eventually, you're right. You get burned when you keep playing with fire. Let me ask you about a little fire offensively. Speaking of West Virginia, we talked a lot about what they were able to do against Baylor. Now they have to deal with a Texas team that I think with a win, Dennis, may raise some eyebrows. The Longhorns may be back. Hook 'em.
Yeah, no, I think they are. I think they've got the ingredients. They won a shootout with Oklahoma State last week, which is going to happen in the Big 12. But they are the best part of their team is their defense with the young coordinator, Manny Diaz. David Ash was great. He developed, I think, quicker than anybody thought on offense. And this may be, when you talk about it, the game of the week in terms of interest-wise. Manny Diaz, who's yet to turn 40, probably in the biggest game of his young career as a coordinator, trying to slow down West Virginia, and West Virginia playing its first big Big 10 or Big 12 road game, going to Texas. Let's see how Geno Smith and those receivers operate against that defense. I think this is going to be fantastic.
I think so too, and I think the name that will be tossed around quite a lot this week down there in Austin is James Brown. I think when they watch Geno, they'll say, yeah, I've seen this play out before in Burnt Orange. Hey, Dennis, while we have you, let me ask you where you're going this week.
I will be at LSU, Florida, to see to see the brawl to settle it all. So I will be down in Gainesville.
All right. Well, take it easy up there. Dennis, of course, joining us each and every week right here on College Football 360. And, of course, you can always send him a letter on Twitter. It's Dennis.CBS. And if you ask him a good question, we might even get to it right here at College Football 360. And a reminder, be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. You can like us at facebook.com/IOnCollegeFootball. And you can always follow us. Our Twitter handle is at IOnCFB.